Hello, Mike Barrett here again with testingiseasy.com, and this is the fifth and final idea in my little mini series here on how to get you and your students to be on the same side as one another so that you can minimize any sort of confrontational tension that might be between you. And that in turn, as we have mentioned repeatedly, will help the student to absorb whatever it is that you are trying to explain. So my fifth and final idea is to learn something every single time that you teach. This is an idea that gets a lot of lip service from a lot of people. I know it's like sort of a cliche that teachers say, oh, well, I always learn from my students and blah, 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 blah. And some of them I'm sure do, but it's clear that most of them actually do not. If you deal with them and talk to them, they're delivering the same lectures, they're delivering the same PowerPoint presentations or whatever it is that they've been doing for the last 20 years or 30 years or 100 years or who knows. And they're doing it most of the time with very, very little heart in it. They're sort of brushing off any kind of questions from students or anything like that. And we don't want to do that at all. When we give, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a lecture, whether it's a class, phone tutoring appointment, anything like that, you want to be fully mentally present in the moment. We don't just want to say, okay, well, I'm going to have a tutoring appointment and I'm going to talk about the GMAT, I don't know, math questions or something, and so I'll just do my usual GMAT math spiel and that'll be that. You don't want that to happen. If that's what happens, that student is not getting the best that you have to offer. You want to be mentally present in the discussion because the student is going to have his or her own perspective on whatever it is you say. And that back and forth, that give and take, that can be a very, very helpful thing on its own. Even if there isn't that much back and forth, because sometimes there isn't. Sometimes the student, no matter how much you try to be there for them, they really don't care. You know what I mean? That exists, unfortunately. But sometimes you have a student like that, or a situation like that, or an audience who really doesn't care about what you have to say. So even when that happens, still, if you are mentally engaged in the material that you're presenting, and if you're willing to kind of allow yourself to stray a little bit, to sort of make connections where there might not have been connections in your head before, anything you can do like that is going to teach you stuff about your own material. It's going to help you see things that you didn't already see. And more importantly, it's going to help you communicate more effectively with the student. It's going to help you get through whatever barriers or mental blocks the student might have. I am a student of karate, and one thing I've always found very interesting is when you go into like an authentic, traditional Japanese style dojo, and I'm not pronouncing any of these words properly, I apologize, I don't know how to, I've never studied Japanese, but when you go into the dojo, at the beginning of the class, the instructor bows to the students. This is very important, and the instructor says, "Onegai shimasu," which again, I'm not pronouncing properly, but the meaning of the phrase is, show me the way, like show me how to do this better. The instructor says it to the students. To the students, the instructor says, please help me get better at this thing. So even though everybody in the room is acknowledging the fact that the instructor is the master, the instructor is the top person in the room as far as whatever art is being studied, the instructor recognizes that it's the interaction with the students and the dealing with their questions and their thoughts, and even just demonstrating things to them, again and again, it's this behavior that helps you fully master whatever it is that you're trying to master. And we don't want to lose sight of that. A lot of teachers especially, but also tutors, they really don't have this spirit of camaraderie and teamwork. They don't look at what they're teaching as an opportunity for them to learn and profit and become more competent instructors, more intelligent, more informed. They don't look at it as any of that stuff. I have had, I'm sure that you've probably also had as well, instructors who use the same set of notes and the same set of classroom materials for like 3 or 4 decades. And their understanding of their material never evolves, never becomes more sophisticated, never changes. They don't take any kinds of questions from students. They don't do any of those things, and as a result, first of all, they hate their work, and second of all, they're bad at it. I mean, they should hate it. They don't really deserve not to hate it. We want to be on a much, much different footing. Much different, can you say that? On a very different footing, that's much better. So, we want to be on a very different footing. And when a student asks, well, why can't I do this over here? Or why are these different? Why are these the same? Why don't you do this thing that everybody else does? You don't just want to brush those questions aside, even if you've been asked those questions a million times. You want to engage that student directly and say, well, you asked about this. Here's the answer to that. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts? What are your reactions? Because when you get that feedback from the student and the student says, oh, now I get it, or, oh, I still don't really see why this is the case, having to explain that in a new way or having to think about it in a new way, that's a very, very powerful exercise for you. It's very, very effective for you. And if you take full advantage of it, you're going to see that as the decades go by, you become better and better and better at what you do. Anytime you talk with me in a tutoring capacity, I promise you I'm a better tutor now than I was a month ago, and better than I was 6 months ago, and a year ago, and 2 years ago, and 3 years ago. And it's not that I wasn't trying my hardest then. I was. I always am. It's that as the time goes by, it's almost like the way like a wine ages, or you just develop a more sophisticated, more subtle, more complex understanding of whatever the topic is, and you begin to see relationships and things that the average person doesn't see. It's not because they're not smart enough to see it, just because they haven't been thinking about it as much as you have, right? But you throw away that entire opportunity if instead of sitting down and working with the student, being on the same team, engaging yourself, instead of doing that, you just say, well, I'm going to give my standard SAT vocabulary lecture, and I'll be out of here in 45 minutes. If you do that, they're not going to learn as much as they could, and you're not going to learn anything, and the whole thing really is kind of a waste of time for everybody concerned. So I know, like I said, that a lot of people pay a lot of lip service to this. You've probably heard the idea before that you should learn something when you teach. Really think about and ask yourself, am I learning something when I teach? Do I come out of my classes with a better understanding of what I'm teaching than the understanding I went in with? If the answer is no, honestly, you're probably not teaching. Well, not probably. I'm trying to be polite. Honestly, you are definitely not teaching as well as you could be. We want always to be mentally engaged with the student. And we never want to make the mistake of thinking that we fully mastered whatever it is we're talking about. There's always room for improvement, always. Because we're all human. We're all flawed. There are things we can do better and better and better. So don't let those opportunities go by, and don't turn tutoring and teaching and instructing into work. It should be an opportunity for you to learn and to help someone else learn. Everybody is happy. Everybody does better. Everybody's more effective, more competent. It should be, honestly, it should be a good time when you interact with your students. Everybody should come away feeling enriched from the process. If they don't, you're almost certainly forgetting about this. So look for ways to do this. Very, very important. Sort of a trite idea, but extremely powerful. And if you implement it, I know you're going to see great results. For that matter, if you implement really any of the ideas we've talked about in the series, I know you're going to see some amazing, in some cases, instantaneous turnarounds from your pupils. So please do give it a shot. I hope you found this useful. I would certainly, of course, encourage any kind of comments that you might feel like leaving, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.